Hello everybody, thank you so much for sticking with us. This is Breakfast Central and we are now getting into conversations about issues that impact us as a society. As today is World Cities Day, we're looking at climate change in coastal cities. So Africa's coastal cities are facing climate change challenges that are the major focus across the continent for us here on World Cities Day. And this is being celebrated around the world, of course. The World Cities Day 2019 has its theme, Changing the World, Innovations and Better Life for Future Generations. It is a day set aside by the UN to promote the international community's interest in global urbanization, push forward cooperation among countries in meeting opportunities and addressing challenges of urbanization. The UN says that half of the world's population are already living in cities, with the number expected to double by 2050. It says that urbanization poses several sustainability challenges related to climate change, housing, environment, infrastructure, safety, and natural resources. So Africa's coastal cities such as Lagos, Abidjan, Lome, Cape Town and Dar Salaam have witnessed flooding in recent years due to the challenges of increased urbanization and climate change. Coastal cities across the continent are now witnessing huge flooding, with many left homeless for weeks after such invasion by the waters. On its part, Lagos in Nigeria has not found it easy either, as 2019 has been rough for residents living on the coastlines. Experts say to prevent more flooding catastrophe, authorities must balance the development of African cities with the effect of nature through the creation of natural barriers. So I'm very excited to be joined by Desmond Majekodunmi, who is a renowned Nigerian environmentalist and is also the chairman of Lagos State Urban Forest and Animal Shelter Initiative and the promoter of the expansive Lufasi Park along the Lagos-Ekpe Expressway. So very warm welcome to you. Good morning. I really did my best with the talking drum with my mouth for your surname, but I'm going to work on that. I know you were trying to coach me before we got on, but very excited to have you on board. Although what we're discussing today currently looks a little bit grim. Look at West Africa, look at East Africa. It's been heavy downpour and the result has been floods. Now, how much of this is due to our lack of preparation and how much is due to a dramatic change in the climate?
Well, to start with, you said it looks grim. It is a little bit grim, but it's not nearly as grim as what happened to the Bahamas 6 weeks ago, when as a result of a classic climate change activity, storms hit that nation for 36 hours. It was inundated. In fact, it was apocalyptic. So as grim as it is, it's not as grim as it will be if we don't do the right thing. Climate change is the main cause of these problems. It's not rocket science. You put more heat into a system, then you energize the system. And the systems of our planet, they have certain heat differentials that they operate under. And once you upset those heat differentials, you start to destroy the operating system. So it's a warning, and it's not me saying, I don't have the requisite knowledge. I'm just drawing on pronouncements that have been made by people who do have the knowledge, like the Secretary General of the United Nations, who just recently, 3 weeks ago, called an emergency conference on the climate just before the National Assembly, the General Assembly meeting, because he no longer calls it the climate change. He no longer even calls it the climate crisis. Officially, in the United Nations, they now call it the climate emergency. Emergency. So it's a serious matter. And as grim as it is now, oh boy, it could get a lot grimmer if we don't do the right thing.
Now we see the conversation around the state of climate emergency globally. Are we treating it with the urgency it deserves? And what are the steps that need to be taken, practically speaking?
Good question. There was a little girl that appeared at that United Nations conference called Greta, 16-year-old girl who had started the climate strikes, and she faced the General Assembly and she said, "Our house is on fire." Okay? Now, God forbid that a fire should start in this particular lovely studio we're in. But if there was a fire, I can assure you that everybody would vacate, everybody would take it as an emergency. That's exactly what is happening to the planet, except it's a slow burning fire, so we can still sort of ignore it if we want to, and if we have invested interest that might get a little bit upset, maybe our profit margin would be reduced if we had to do the necessary things in order for the fire not to get more voracious. We might try to ignore it. Hey, the house is on fire. So, you know, there's no action that you can do that would be enough, because we've got to put out this fire. The ecosystems, the very life support ecosystems of this planet are being massively threatened, as has been shown by the classic example of those poor people in the Bahamas, as happened in Mozambique, in Africa, as is happening right now as we're talking in California, the kind of fires that are raging in that place because it's getting more dry and because stronger winds, in fact the strongest kind of winds.
You saw those in Cape Town as well, that was just earlier in the year.
The alarm bell is blowing. And if the fire alarm bell blows here and we ignore it, then we are exceedingly foolish.
How much of what we're seeing in the African context is due to, shall I call it, design error or poor planning in the quest to rapidly urbanize? Because you hear so many conversations, let's bring it to Lagos, about how some of the processes of reclaiming land may backfire, within our lifetimes, certainly. So, where are the checks and balances?
Yeah, I know. It's so unfortunate for us here in Africa. And we call it, the colonial mentality. For some reason, we haven't really been able to overcome it the way that we should have. We were conquered only because of the power of gunpowder. Believe you me, if any of the colonialists had entered from Nigeria to Zimbabwe or wherever they entered, and they didn't have gunpowder and they were dealing with the local people with the
we would have put up a better fight, that's for sure.
God, exactly, And so this sort of gave us this thing of, everything from the West is great. Yeah, there's wonderful innovations. The spirit of witty invention has been very strong coming from the West, but we embraced far too much of it far too rapidly, instead of rejecting the negative aspects of it. And this development, they also are having tremendous problems with their so-called development. Because if in the process of developing, especially your urban areas, which the whole populations are moving into, you're now causing irreparable damage to the very life support ecosystems, then it's not development. And I think we need to really, really take stock, and especially when you have, the cities which we want to develop, we got to remember that our forefathers, they were using very, very good materials. I mean, you go into a mud hut, you don't need an air conditioner. You hardly need a fan, because they're using the right sort of material for the environment. So what we now need to do is to start looking back a little bit, adopting some of those practices, modernizing them, using a bit more of the best of the modern technologies, and developing cities that are made for Africa. We can't be building buildings that are made for London winter in the middle of tropical Africa. It doesn't make too much sense. We got to break this colonial mentality mold and just do our thing using the best of their things.
And I love this line of thought because, we're taking the power away from the macro level of the conversation and bringing it to a micro level. Now, to bring it even more grassroots, what is it that the individual can do within their community to start to preserve what we have and to start to prepare? Because if we wait on the powers that be, we may be waiting for a long time. So what can we start doing in our communities that are flooding on a weekly basis now to build up towards, because this is only, in the Nigerian context, this is year one that we've seen such an outpour of rain in 1 year. Now, year two, surely, year 3, year 4, by the time we get to year 5, Lekki may be underwater.
Yeah, it could be getting that bad, even if it's just for a short while. No, I'm so glad you asked that question, because every action obviously starts with the mind. And what has happened globally with mankind is that we've disconnected ourselves from nature. And we need to get back into that kind of thinking, that we are a part of nature. We're not apart from nature. And as the primary species, we are responsible for nature. And this gives me hope for Africa and definitely for Nigerians, because we are God-conscious people. We know there is a supreme entity. We call him different names. But we know there is a creator of the creation. 95% of Nigerians, they believe in God, and a whole lot of them profess to love God. So we need to look into the scriptures. The one I'm more familiar with is the Christian scripture, which says very clearly, every step of the creation, God said it was good, it was good, it was good. And when he made the final efforts of creation, he said it was very good. And we profess to love this God who said his creation was very good, and we're destroying the creation. There's a hypocrisy there which we need to overcome. So we need to get our minds into the reality that we are actually supposed to be creation carers. So everything we do, we should be thinking, okay, is this good for the creation? Is this going to honor the God who bestowed the creation upon me and made me a steward of the creation? And then we now look at the practical things. Definitely, if you love your God and you want to care for his creation, you're not going to throw plastic around all over the place that's going to...
So littering, problem number 1 that we need to look at.
Exactly, yes. Waste, handle your waste effectively. Again, as Africans, in days gone by, eating materials and so on. Typical example, moi moi. You've had moi moi here. Yeah, you probably had it cooked in plastic. Moi moi.
I had mine in the leaf. Environmentally conscious.
Yes. Just like our forefathers and foremothers have been doing for centuries and centuries. If you throw that in the bush, no problem. But now we're using plastic. So we need to go back to, again, adopting some of those good traditional practices. So handle our waste effectively and very well, number 1. Number two, we got to read green. Read green.
This is what's behind Lufase Park.
Which is what is behind our park, which used to be a farm. When the urban explosion started, we made an arrangement with the Lagos State government that this 20 hectares must be retained as a green space, because each one of the leaves in that park are doing such a wonderful job. They're giving us our most essential commodity. And this is where we now test people, and we let them know, you are supposed to care for the environment more than anything else. And some of them saying, what? I can actually give you the test right now by asking you a very simple question, and you're going to say no to the question.
I hope I won't fail. Okay, let's try it.
In fact, if you can say yes to the question, I'm going to give you $10,000.
Oh, dollars,
but
the green ones.
My money is safe. My money is safe. Because you will say no. Question, you want to hear the question?
Okay, I'll be honest.
Are you sure you want to hear the question?
I'm not going to cheat. Yes, I want to hear the question.
No, if you say yes, we'll test you.
Okay. What's the question?
And this question will prove scientifically that caring for the environment, most important thing you can do. Can you?
Can I?
Can you hold your breath for 10 minutes? Hold your nose, hold your mouth, we count 10 minutes.
This test is rigged. This is set up to fail, but I understand what you're saying. We're losing our lungs, in essence.
Exactly. And we're
for cities.
Yes, and we're breathing in oxygen.
Yeah.
Okay, oxygen, without which we can't survive for 10 minutes. Where does the oxygen come from?
Yeah.
Every single one of those green leaves that we see in the environment is giving us our most essential life support commodity, oxygen. So it kind of makes sense that we should preserve that which gives us our most essential commodity. I don't care how rich you are. I don't care how blessed or anointed you are.
Oxygen.
10 minutes, you're gone. Yeah, so hey, protect that which gives us our life support. Not to mention the water, not to mention the food, and so on. So we got to regreen everywhere. We got to see trees, plants. I'm so happy. At least I see one tree is still left outside this office. Oh, thank you, the builders of this office.
The sarcasm is not lost. So we're looking at possibly infusing models into African urbanization that cater for green, for parks, where we can't cut everything down and replace it with concrete.
Essential. It's essential. It's essential. It's not development if we are just replacing the greenery and the good clean air with concrete and dirty air. It's the total opposite. We're destroying our future. It's serious. It's an emergency. You know, we've stretched the rubber band, you know, of the life support systems to the limit now. Yeah, and you know, when the United Nations make those sort of statements, they know why they're making those kind of statements. They have access to hundreds, if not thousands, of scientists all over the world. And the scientists are saying, oh boy, this thing is getting out of hand. This thing is getting serious. So regreen. And then finally, as citizens in a democratic country, we must insist that we shall no longer be relying on personal generators for our electricity. Enough is enough, and any government that cannot, in a very, very short space of time, supply steady electricity and even clean water for the citizens, they have no justification for being in governance, because they're not serving the people.
The basic needs of this era. Desmond, I wish we could continue, but I think we've extracted a lot of knowledge from this conversation, you know, about waste management, about being excited about going green, and, or shall I say, restoring our green in our cities across Africa.
Essential.
And the use of sustainable energy. Very critical for us to be able to preserve the environment and hopefully slow down and possibly reverse this slippery slope that we find ourselves on globally.
We can do it, and we shall do it.
We shall do. Thank you so much for this.
Okay.
I'll shake your hand.
My
Excuse
pleasure.
me. I'm losing my voice. Excuse me. Right. On that note, that's all we have for The Impact. Today is World Cities Day, and we are looking at the impact of climate change, or as Desmond put it, climate emergency on our African cities. You have the knowledge. Now it's up to you to go and act. We'll see you after the break.